Hello, good afternoon. I'm Caroline Hill, Editor-in-Chief of Legal IT Insider, and I'm joined by Eric Laughlin, who is CEO of contract lifecycle and business process management company Agile. Hi, Eric.
Hi, how are you, Caroline?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you.
Great.
Yes, it's a very rainy, horrible day here just outside London. So
Just the same in Seattle. So a world apart, but all the same.
So it's great to chat to you. So in August you raised a whopping $45 million, which was growth equity investment from we'll come on to perhaps who in a minute. But so we're here to talk a little bit about perhaps I think to help people learn a bit more about Agiloft if they don't know the company, and also to talk a bit about the investment and what's going to happen now and what your plans are, which is really cool. Just to introduce you a bit more, so you actually worked closely with Agiloft's founder and CTO, Colin Earle, didn't you, in the background? You were very much involved with the raise, and then you were brought in, as far as the outside world could tell, you were brought in as part of the raise as CEO, but actually you were involved in the background for quite a while, hey?
That's right. Actually, even before I started working directly with Colin, I was working with Agiloft as a partner and as a customer. So I got to know the business even as long as, a year and a half ago, working with them, seeing them as a customer, seeing the platform while I was working at EY, and then working with them as a partnership right between EY and Agiloft. But you're right, as of this March, I started working with Colin and his team directly. And Colin asked me if I would be CEO and help him with that financing raise. So we spent, the sort of summer doing that raise and closing with FTV. We feel really fortunate to be working with FTV. And as you said, $45 million is a lot. It's a big investment. It makes sense for the space we're in, given how big it is and how, so how big our growth ambitions are for Agiloft. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing to work with a founder and a founding, company that's been bootstrapped, that's been growing, that's profitable, and then to say, okay, now it's time to go even bigger and get a big raise and see what we can do with that.
Yes, I'm going to come on to the funding a bit, but just you mentioned EY, but I should sort of perhaps also say, so you've helped grow Pangea 3, which many people in the industry will know. I think you described it as your baby, and then obviously that ended up being acquired by EY. So you obviously are hugely familiar with this space, and you've been involved for how many years?
Yeah, well, I've been on contracts for, I don't know, maybe a decade, I guess. So I worked at Thomson Reuters for a long time. Worked in software businesses, content businesses, and services businesses. And as you know, Thomson Reuters acquires a lot of companies. So I was involved in the acquisition of Serengeti on the e-billing and matter management side and ran that for a while. We also acquired Pangea 3. Another great set of founders there, and David and Sanjay, who brought that business to Thomson Reuters. And I had the fortune of helping to grow that business and spent, the last 4 or 5 years of my time at Thomson Reuters dedicated to Pangea 3. That business was in litigation, in IP, and in contracts. But as we got further and further down, we realized just how big the contracts market was, just how much help there was that we could provide in contracts. And so as EY purchased Pangea 3 from Thomson Reuters, and we brought 1,000 professionals into the EY system, the main goal there was to work in contracts. And when we work with GCs, with legal operations departments and contracts, it was very clear that the ones who were doing the best job were thinking about, they were thinking about their people, right? They're thinking about the process and the sort of outsourcing that Pangea 3 could do, but they were also equally thinking about the platform. What contract lifecycle management platform should I have, and what will that allow me to do? So that got us really tuned in to CLM in all the ways that GCs and legal ops think about it. And wow, that got me super excited when I got the opportunity to work with Agiloft.
Yeah, I bet it's such an exciting space, especially now with with everyone remote working. I mean, it's really accelerated, hasn't it? It's now, so the contract space, contract lifecycle management, it was on top of agenda for a lot of people before, and now I think that's accelerated dramatically. Now that you have to have that visibility regardless of where you are.
Yeah, right. I just to follow on with that, I think you're right. Most heads of legal operations had contracts very high on their list, especially on the technology side. But you're right that the pandemic has focused people even more on contracts, and I think it's happened in two ways, right? One is within the legal department, if your let's say your CFO is asking, your legal department, how much exposure do we have in our contracts to, businesses that might go under during the pandemic? How much, what is our, what obligations do we have that we might not be able to fulfill? Those are all things that you ask yourself. You have to look in your contracts to find the answers. And if you don't have a contract lifecycle management, tool or platform, it's pretty tough to find those answers. And so that put even more focus on CLM. I think the other thing that's happened recently is I think there's just a broader acknowledgement that contract lifecycle management is not just the domain of the legal department, right? It is procurement, it is legal, it is sales, it's enterprise software. And so, a legal ops professional or GC doesn't have to sit there and say to herself, where am I going to get this budget? They should be thinking, let me get all these people together that care about contracts in the company. We can all get the budget and we can all do a better job of managing and drafting contracts together.
I could talk about this all day because actually, so I've been talking about from a general perspective that now tech should be such a high level strategic decision, that it actually benefits so many different departments. I think this, but tell me about, I want to come on to talk about what your plans are now you've got this funding, but for people that don't know Agile, so just give me a sort of a 2-second run through of the platform. It's a repository, but it's way more than that.
Sure. Well, CLM is way more than repositories. So anything from drafting a contract, routing it, negotiating it, then obviously pulling the data out of it, keeping the documents and the data in a repository, and then managing the obligations afterwards. All of that has to be coordinated between procurement and sales and legal ops, legal operations. So AgileOft can manage all of those pieces of the process. The thing that makes AgileOft pretty unique is that it is built on a no-code BPM or business process management platform. And so while a lot of platforms have to be, in order to be configured to an individual enterprise's needs, they have to be kind of custom coded. What AgileOft has is it was built on a no-code BPM platform, which means that all of that configuration, all that complexity, all those different people and touch points that CLM need to have, those can all be configured within the browser without any custom code. So what that means for the end user is that they can get very custom code, but it's also very flexible. They can change it. So, most folks who are putting in a CLM tool, an enterprise CLM tool, are doing it for the first time. And, what they think they need today will probably change in a year, or just the business will change, right? You'll acquire somebody, you'll divest somebody. Things change rapidly in the business and they need to be reflected in the platform. And so the beauty of having this no-code configurable platform is that it can change rapidly as the business changes.
Yeah.
And so, we believe that CLM is a journey, and the platform has to be able to move with the journey, and that's what really stands apart for AgileOft.
Yeah, I think a couple of years ago when I first started sort of really diving into the corporate contracts, probably a good few years ago, I'm realizing that the reality is that the teams, through no fault of their own, are really just not able to stay on top of. For example, if it's leases, when the lease comes up for renewal, there's so much information, isn't there, that traditionally has just been locked because they have just not they've just not got oversight of their contracts. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it kind of shocked me, and I know it's one of those things that quite honestly keeps people up at night, from a risk perspective.
Yeah, I've heard people, you think about from a risk perspective, absolutely right. How do you sort of demystify what's in these documents and really pull them out using AI, and then keeping it active within a CLM tool? The other phrase that I've heard recently that people talk about is that these documents that live in your enterprise, those are assets, right? So you have this set of document assets, and if you're not taking advantage of them, yes, there is risk, but you're also losing the opportunity to make sure that you're doing everything you can do to take advantage of what's in those assets. 100%. So it's interesting. You can look at it either way.
Yeah, 100% in terms of where the blockages are, right? In terms of which teams are most effective, in terms of where you need to focus your resources potentially. All those kinds of things can be surfaced here.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's such an interesting space, and I think, as I said, it's a journey for everyone. So I think we're only now discovering, what else contracts can lead into, and I think that's something that I believe, and maybe we can transition to talking about where we're going to put our money, because when we think about contract, what it is today for one enterprise is going to change, but also what a platform like Agile can do can change. So, I have to make sure that I'm being a good steward of this investment, that we're scaling the business and that we're growing the platform and that we're sort of stretching what CLM can do. So I think that's a big part of the story.
So good prompt that we should talk about the money. So 45 million, it's enormous sum of money, right? I speak to a lot of vendors, and I speak to a lot of vendors who are involved in raising money, and that's a huge amount of money. So it's all drawn down, right? Just explain. So it's growth equity funding, and it's all available right now. Tell me a bit more about the funding, because obviously one of the things that I think that I've been guilty of in the past is perhaps just treating everything with the same brush, but it's obviously not.
Yeah, no, I think that I learned a lot about the funding process going through it as well, and I think the thing that one of the things became clear is who you're getting the money from matters, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's a venture capital fund or it's a private equity fund or it's sort of in the middle, which is this growth equity area. So those can mean lots of different things too. There's lots of shades of each of those, but VC typically investing in much earlier startups that maybe are just still building a business and getting new customers. A lot of PE funds are investing in more mature businesses that they think they can drive cash value from, and growth equity somewhere in the middle. And so Agile already has 600 customers. It's been around for more than a decade. It's a mature business with a real product that needs that funding to grow. It's not about figuring out how to make cash on the bottom line, because we're already profitable. It's a matter of how to take that and then sort of realize that there is a much bigger opportunity for the business, and so we can grow it pretty fast with that equity. Obviously, it matters who you're working with, because they have great connections and sort of they bring lots of operating partners to the business as well. But we're really satisfied with FTV, very happy with the partnership so far.
I bet. And then, so in terms of your targets, your objectives, so you want to grow. So to tell me about what your plans are in terms of the growth, in terms of your growth.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, scaling the business is a big deal. For us, that means making sure that we've got, from a customer perspective, what matters is, can they find the folks in the Agile organization that are going to help them, right? So do we have to put people, in all of the regions that we want to operate in. We're mostly North America based right now, and so we need to have more people in the European, countries that we're targeting. We need to have more coverage in the U.S. just simply because it's helpful to have people who are in your region, in your state, in your city. It doesn't matter as much during the pandemic, but that will end. Certainly everything can be virtual now, but the time zones matter, and the sports team that you talk about matters, and so things matter. Local still matters even during the pandemic. So making sure that we have global coverage is a big deal for scaling the company. Pushing the platform to new heights matters, right? So we have not just a product, right? We have a platform that can really be built on, and so we need to continue to build platform capabilities. For us, that means a lot of AI investment. Right? So we have our own AI infrastructure. We call it Agile AI Core, and it does all of the contracts is a great place for AI, because there's a lot of work just in ripping the metadata out of the contracts. But the more interesting work now is using AI for use cases to build insight into the documents. So for us, an example is how do you do risk analysis on a document that comes in from a third party? Right, so set up a risk framework around different clauses that matter to you, how different those clauses are from the things in your own clause library, and immediately be able to focus in a very long document in the right places that matter for you, that are going to make the biggest difference in the negotiation. So that's just an example. So we need to continue to build out those AI capabilities in the platform. And then the thing that matters to us when I think of pushing the boundaries of CLM. So contract lifecycle management, yes, we call it contract and commerce lifecycle management. And what we mean by that is that contracts are connected to commerce, right? They are the instruction manual for the commercial activities of the enterprise. So everything that's encoded in that document, that reflects what you've decided to agree upon with your vendor or with your customer or with your employee or with your partner. And so all of that commerce is done around this document. And so it would just be a travesty if all you did was record it and then throw it away or put it somewhere. You have to actually connect that data into the downstream obligations that you have or that your partners or vendors have. And so when we think about that, it makes sense that a CLM platform would start to build on additional modules that matter in the commercial life of the enterprise. So for example, maybe on the sourcing side, so for an RFX process, how do you manage that RFX process so it smoothly flows into a contract process? Why should those applications be different? Or on the back end, doing real obligations management, how are you going to fulfill your own obligations that are in that contract and connect the pieces of information in that document to your service teams, for example, that are really doing the work for the customers. So AgileLoft has a no-code platform, and that's what it's built on. And so we can rapidly develop these sort of commercial applications that sit on the side of CLM. So I think that AgileLoft will be able to quickly use this money to develop that commerce lifecycle management idea.
Okay. And just lastly, I suppose, in terms of, so obviously you've already got some big clients, like Honeywell being, one of the names that is out in the public domain, quite a lot of them. Is it, I mean, do you see this, is this just more of the same, those kind of customers? Do you see any changes, in the partnerships that you're going to be developing and the clients that you're going to be working with?
Absolutely. I mean, the ecosystem around the platform is important, and so yes, I mean we've already started to work with a lot of large companies, like you mentioned, Honeywell. We have a lot of case studies on our website that we've created, people checked out. I think the partner ecosystem is critical, not only for us to grow as a business, but to surround our clients with the right help that they might need. Typically, we've done most of our own implementations, and so we know now we've started working with the big four consultancies to do implementation and other folks that can sort of come alongside us and partner with us. I think that's important for us to grow in different ways, and it's also it's really important. I think that our customers have the ability to work with us on implementation, but they can also work with one of their preferred partners. And so we're doing a lot of training right now of different partners. It's also important that we hook up with the technology stack that they have in the enterprise. CLM is enterprise technology, which means it needs to work with Salesforce, it needs to work with SAP, it needs to work with Jira, it needs to work with anything that you happen to be using in your enterprise. And so, that's one of the investments that we're making in the platform. It's just more and more and more integrations, working with specific applications as well as middleware, and really thinking of it really is enterprise technology. It's not just legal tech.
Okay. Well, look, I could talk all day, but it's been great, and hopefully we can catch up again soon and find out how things are going with you.
I would love to. Hopefully, be on a sunny day for
you. Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Nice chatting to you.
All right, great. Nice to talk to you.
Bye.
Bye now.